Welcome everybody. Good evening everyone. Welcome back to TCR Trinity Competitive Racing.
Well, TCR TJ is the Season 13 Golden Class Champion for Trinity Competitive Racing.
Oh, let's go, dude! Yes!
Jabbar on the podium! He's on it by a 10! Gentlemen, side by side through one. And silent, and Liveries gets a half spin. Let's fucking go! Wheel bumping.
DRS enable, let's do it.
And Captain Blade battling it out for position. Captain Blade. Ickle, what the? The McChicken goes around and he also makes
rewind down the front straight. Oh my god.
I gotta check the heart rate.
Why do we do this? Because of nights like this.
Yo, welcome everybody to TCR, Trinity Competitive Racing, and welcome to episode number 44 of the Racing Debrief. TCR's podcast where we combine the world of e-racing, sim racing, and TCR with real-life motorsports and Formula One, a true racing enthusiast listen. I am your host, as per usual, Liveries, alongside Mr. Camden Luga. Welcome back. How are we?
We're doing good, Liveries. You know, I'm really feeling like I could be a Simon Cowell or a Gordon Ramsay today because what we got on the menu is some liveries that we're going to review. And I've already seen a couple of them, and I've got some opinions, so this is going to be fun.
I thought you meant what's on the menu as in food options, because I am quite hungry, but I guess we'll leave that to the race for tomorrow, which reminds us, Tuesday, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time will take place for the TCR Season 19 F1 Series at, I do believe, Belgium, for the Belgium Grand Prix. That'll be commentated by Camden, and I should be there as well, so we will return to TCR. But today, as you had mentioned, we're going to rank some liveries. I have them all set up, and I think we'll go in order. I'm not sure if you had watched the F1 reveal show that F1 did. I wasn't able to watch it fully live, but I did go back and watch parts and pieces of it. And I just want to say that generally, I thought they did a really good job with that whole event. Revealing all of the liveries and the teams and the drivers and the interviews and a couple little like promos before the reveal, a couple performances throughout. You know, it was in I think London, I believe, or somewhere out there, and I felt like it was a good kind of start to the season, right? Because you know a lot of other sports have like preseason, right, testing, and they have you know, the pre-build to the season, and I feel like F1 was kind of lacking that. The only way we could have gotten all of that is just from the media and different news sources, and actually to tune in to preseason testing, but there was, I guess, lacking that the reveal of the drivers, the teams, the liveries, the sponsors, you know. I think that's something I guess more that NASCAR does a good job at, I would say, just in a fair comparison. But this was really well done. I hope they continue to do this like every season, because to me this is kind of like the start of the F1 season, and it was, I thought, really good for the first time, and I'm wondering how it could, you know, be even better. They kind of knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. But I just thought I'd mention that. I don't know if you've had any thoughts on that, Camden.
Yeah, well, every sport has its build-up to the season. If you look at the NFL, they have preseason games and training camp. If you look at baseball right now, they're having their spring training games. Pitchers and catchers are getting warmed up. And Formula One has its own thing where they go and introduce all the liveries, and they kind of introduce everyone, because F1, as much as it's a team sport, it is an individual sport as well. And there's been a couple of pretty high-profile moves, with one of them being Lewis Hamilton, obviously going to Ferrari, which, speaking of that, it is episode 44. I thought I would just hint that out there. But yeah, I think there was a couple of things, like seeing Lewis in the red for the first time. That was a big deal for the F1 livery reveal. And yeah, I feel like there weren't that many livery changes. There's a lot of familiar looks, but we'll get into that in just a second.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I thought overall, it was really good. But we'll start with the first team here. We'll kind of go through the rankings, and we can, if you did watch any of the reveal, because I did watch each team's reveal, and I do like some teams I think did better than others, and it was kind of cool to see the team's history behind it with some of the trailers and whatnot, and some of their history, for example, and we'll get into that. Each team kind of has their own, pretty much like walk-up song almost, to signify what's important for them coming into the season, because every team's got their own, I guess, story per se. So it kind of sets the scene, for preseason testing, but also round one. So generally, I thought it was really good. But the first reveal was Williams. Not Williams. Sauber, Kick Sauber, was actually the first reveal, and very similar to last year's, the neon and the black. I do have a picture up on screen here for those watching on the YouTube side of things, but what would you give this livery ranking?
So I am judging these liveries by two things: the colors and whether or not there was a change. And the change isn't necessarily significant, because you have people like Red Bull that haven't changed their socks in a decade. But it could be significant, because there are some liveries that could use some touch-up. And this was one of them that I feel like didn't really need a touch-up, and they did. They took away some of the green from last year's livery on the side of the car by the side pods, and they just made it a plain black. And I'm not really a fan of that, honestly, because I feel like Kick Sauber's brand is green, and the black should accompany that. So I would say the colors are great. Just the green and the black, if you're looking at the colors alone, they're great. But I'm not a big fan of the change, so I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10.
Wow, right down the middle way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I've got my Simon Cowell hat on. Like, I'm not going easy.
I would say that I tend to agree with this one, but I kind of like what they did with, and I think a few teams did this year. When you look at the car from the front versus the side, it's kind of like two different colors almost. Like when you look at the Sauber more from the straight front wing to the back of the car, it looks mainly neon green. But when you look at the side profile, which I have up on screen here, that's where you see the black and more prominently on the side pod. But I like it because it has a nice canvas for the stake sponsorship. So I like it a little bit better, actually, than I think towards the rear of the car. They did something weird with the green. It was a little bit more green heavy, but I thought they had enough space. Granted, it's a simple livery. You could probably make this in the actual F1 game, and for that, I'd probably just give it a 6 out of 10, because it's a nice looking livery. Like, you can't mess up the neon green and the black, but it's basic, so I'd give it a 6.
Yeah, that's fair. And really, I love the colors.
Yeah.
I'm not critical of
last year. We'll get this
livery
too,
necessarily.
probably.
They got it right last year. I think there were some people that didn't like it. I think it was one of those polarizing paint schemes just because it was new and the green was really bright. But
Because last year it was.
I've always loved it.
Yeah, like this year they have all green in the front. Last year I'm looking at it and there was bits and pieces of black. This year they kind of separated it, so you have green and black. Like there's no mixture at all. But yeah, this will probably be the last season we're getting that color too, right? Because next season they'll be morphed into Audi, so I'd
True.
assume a full rebrand for that one. To an extent.
Yeah, I would assume.
If they keep the same sponsor, you might see parts of it, but it's going to be a completely new team, so a big change there. But all right, let us know what you guys think in the comments of the podcast here on YouTube or in our Discord, where we are the most active. You can join down below. Let's go to the next team, which is now Williams.
Yeah. I really don't have many complaints with this because they didn't really change much from last year's livery. I love the Duracell little advertisement that they have up by the head,
Yes.
by the halo up there. That's a perfect placement for it. And the blue and the black doesn't change. It's fine. So because of the colors staying the same and the fact that nothing's changed, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. What worries me, because I've already seen Sainz's helmet, I'm a little worried as to how that's going to work with the helmet car combination. I just feel like Sainz's helmet might stick out like a sore thumb.
In some instances, I do like that. It's kind of, it gives off like a Daniel Ricciardo or a Hamilton helmet, because they kind of go a little out there with their color helmets. So, but what was your ranking? 7?
I'll give it a 7.
Okay. I actually really like this livery. Williams have had ever since their like martini days, right? You know, the martini stripe.
Oh yeah, I love those liveries.
The classic livery with the martini stripe. Since then, when they changed it, I feel like there's been a lot of years where like they had the correct colors on the car. It's just the combination never made sense. And I think this is the first livery that, like, I know last year is very similar, but it just flows so much nicer this year. And I have really no complaints. The Duracell sponsorship above the head is probably the best placement of a sponsor.
I agree.
And I like that it's not as much black on the car. There's a lot of blue on the side, and that's what the Williams colors are now. Those kind of 2 shades of blue. And I really do like the livery this year. I'd probably gonna have to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't really disagree with that. By the way, Williams this year, Albon and Sainz in
Probably
that driver lineup, that's
great
going to
lineup.
be interesting to watch.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you look what Albon has been doing in the Williams. Now that he has Sainz as a teammate, I mean, man, that could be a whole nother video for predictions, but whew, with this
Could be
nice-
a
it
driver number one controversy there.
I mean, they've been
Sainz
improving.
should be the first option, but like you said, Albon is no slouch.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes there. But nonetheless, solid livery from Williams. And they had a nice promo video on the reveal show for F1. They had a lot of heritage back to Sir Williams himself. But next up, we have the Racing Bulls, the Visa Cash App credit card team, whatever you want to call them. I don't know what they actually are. They just Racing Bulls this year? No.
Give me 2 seconds to
I
double
don't
check
think they
that.
are.
They are the Racing Bulls team.
All right, I like that better than what they were last year. Then.
Well, that's the constructors. No, the full team name is the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. You know, extended name. That is their
Okay.
full name.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but
I think this team creates some of the best liveries that we've seen, and probably since their existence back at Toro Rosso and even AlphaTauri, liveries were really good with the white and that more like navy blue. Last year they kind of went back towards the Toro Rosso colors, but this year it's, I don't know, it's a perfect livery. It's it's probably my favorite of this year. The little racing bulls at the end, the white um, paint on the car. Like, we don't really have a white livery out there. Um, the sponsorship placements are perfect. It's the sister team to Red Bull, and it's pretty much the same livery as Red Bull, just in white and a little slightly different sponsorship. And they absolutely nailed it, I think. I mean, I'm giving it a full 10 out of 10. I would say this is probably my favorite one of the year. And what's great is it is new, and you know, it's an exciting team with liveries where they keep changing it, and it's always seems to work. So good for them.
I don't know why, Seafreeze, but this paint scheme reminds me of those SpongeBob popsicles that I would eat as a kid. You know, like the ones that would come by in the ice cream truck. It really,
Yeah.
it looks like something I would eat.
You would eat the F1 car.
I would. It looks like
Interesting.
a snack, something I would eat.
I
And
guess.
I'm not criticizing that. You know, it's a great, it's a great paint scheme. I would give it a 9 out of 10, and I really don't have an explanation for why it isn't a 10 out of 10, but it just, it feels like it's missing something. The white is great. It works with the yellow and the red, but I almost feel like there should be something else. It's almost too white. Like if they had a little bit more of the Red Bull branding, just a little bit more on there, it would be a 10 out of 10. I don't even know what it is. It just feels like something is missing from it.
Okay.
Not complaining though. A 9 out of 10, that's an A minus
Yeah.
on a test.
I mean, yeah. I like it. Yeah. No, that's fair. That is fair at all. It's gonna be cool
What's
seeing it
next?
on the track. Yeah. Next
What do we
up,
got next?
we have
Oh boy.
Haas F1 team.
Yeah, this
Now,
man, where's my sound effects? Because I have sound effects I use in the booth. I use a Price is Right sound effect where it's like bump bump bum bum bam. It's like you know, when someone loses at the Price is Right. I would use that for this livery because, dear God, this is atrocious. It just the gray, the black, it's all too dark. The colors don't mesh. It needs more white. And I know it's ironic after I said there should have been less white on the previous paint scheme, but this one it's kind of dull. It's not a happy paint scheme. Yeah, I don't, you know, I'd give it a 1 out of 10, honestly.
really, that's
Yeah.
harsh at all. That's really harsh.
Yeah, well, I don't like it.
I would say that I mean, I'm always gonna like the Haas colors. They're basic, and I think every year they could do something a little bit different as far as where they place it. My big critique's gonna be on that side pod where they have just the Haas, and they have the Haas name in black. If they just change that to red, it would make it pop a lot more on the side pod, and I think that would pretty much fix a lot of the dullness in the livery. The the front angle of the car from the front wing is like beautiful. Actually, I like the white The sponsor placements, the American flag above the Haas, everything in the front of the car is actually white. Everything in the beginning is actually a lot, white. You see the red and the red Haas on the back wing. So I have no complaints from the front. It's just the side pod is very dull, and they could have did something different there. But I don't dislike it at all. I think it's a good livery, but just kind of boring. And I'd probably give it a 6.
It's like that Homer Simpson meme where you got him from the front, he's looking all spiffy, and then they shoot to his backside, and he's got like warts, and he's got all sorts of wrinkles and stuff on the back. That's kind of what this paint scheme is like, because I don't disagree with the front of the car. If we're just judging it from the front of the car, I would say maybe a 4 or a 5, but you got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
And remember, I'm judging this from a colors standpoint on if the colors mash up well, with the lettering and with the placement, and then also the change. And if you're comparing this paint scheme from last year's, I would say this is a downgrade. And maybe this will grow on me. Maybe I'll bump it up from a 1, maybe to a 2 or a 3. But this was one of those paint schemes where when I saw it, it immediately was like, ugh. It stood out right away of like, okay, this is going to be the one that is at the bottom of my list. But everyone, different strokes for different folks, right?
I guess so. All right, next up, we have Alpine. And I was actually really surprised with this livery. They had quite the hype intro to this reveal on the F1 show. Although it didn't really seem like the crowd was into it, but that DJ definitely was. It's a good car reveal. I like it. They actually had color on the car, a lot more than last year, which was very underwhelming. And I like it. I think the colors between the blue and the pink are nice. I'm not a huge fan of the pink BWT on the side. I feel like white or white and pink would have been better, similar to what the Alpine is, the Alpine logo on the side pod, where it's pink and then the white lettering. If the side pod was pink with white lettering on the BWT, I think it would be perfect. So again, little odd, colors being chosen there, but other than that, I like it. It's not a perfect livery by any means, but I'd probably have to give it a 7. Solid.
This is one of those liveries that is going to look good on track, I think. And I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. And I'm with you on the BWT writing on the side pod.
Yeah.
That needs to be changed. That is just not. It doesn't look right from the side. It blends in with the pink that's around it. If they were to go and change that to white, then this would be an 8 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10, because the colors really pop. The pink and the blue. The blue is bright. It complements the pink. I like it. I've always liked Alpine's paint schemes going back to Racing Point days. There's a reason why I used the Racing Point in a couple of leagues, because I loved it back in the early 2020s. It was phenomenal back then, but this isn't too far off of that.
Yeah, I liked Alpine a couple years ago when it was completely almost all blue. And I think it was 21, I want to say.
I think so.
Was very nice. And they haven't had the same livery since, but this has definitely been one of the better ones in recent years. But next up we have Speaking of really good liveries, last year they had a pretty nice one. Aston Martin, they did do a few tweaks this year, and I would say it's definitely a downgrade, but not by much, because they didn't take much green off the car, other than the side pod, which to me it works. Because looking at the side profile, which I think is a very important angle for the car. I mean, we keep mentioning the side view. The front is, I think every car's from the front wing looks pretty good. It's just the side view that I think we're more critiquing. But here I think it works because although they have some of the black, it's almost from like the middle down, and then they have the green from like the middle up, and it's kind of separated by that neon green stripe. It's slight, but it's subtle, and I think it works well. And then the rest of the car, especially from the front, is all that British racing green, and the Aston Martin green that is needs to be on the car. So for that, I'd say downgrade from last year. I think I might have given it a 10, so I'd probably give a 9 this time around. Still very solid. One of the better looking ones on the grid.
I am actually going to hand out my first 10 out of 10 for the night.
Wow.
I really like this because I like simple liveries, which is partially why I'm not a huge fan of the Haas one, because it just seems kind of all over the place. And that's not just this year's livery. Haas, they've always had liveries in both F1 and NASCAR that kind of have a bunch of different colors that stand out. And in my opinion, what makes a good livery is a good base color, something that is very obvious. And this Aston Martin one is very obviously dark green. And the yellow is perfect. Like you said, that separation from the green to the black, it's there, but it's not over the top. It's a very fine borderline that meshes in with the rest of the livery. So, and they didn't change it much from last year, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, and really, I'm not the biggest fan of this dark green personally, but if it works, it works, right? If it fits in with the livery, then I can't complain about it.
Yeah. Next up is... Oh, to go back to Aston Martin real quick. They had such an amazing entrance when Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll came out in literally suits, and they had their helmets on in the crowd. That was pretty badass, not gonna lie. So that was fun, for sure. But moving on, next is Mercedes, new look, no Lewis Hamilton. And they have a nice mixture of that silver arrow, that nice turquoise, and the more recent black that they've been putting on the livery. And you can see, I actually really like this livery. I wasn't so thrilled at the reveal, but now looking more in detail and pictures, I think this is going to pop at night when the lights reflect off the silver and the little white and gray and the dark black. I think it'll look really good. And this year they don't have that red, I think it's Equios or what's the Ineos, that sponsorship, right above the head outlet, but by the TV pod camera. They don't have that there, and I felt like that red really ruined a lot of the Mercedes liveries in the past. And I like that it's not there, because it just kind of was an eyesore. This is nice throughout. I'm probably going to give it, I don't know if I would give it a 10, but I'd say up there. I'm going to give it a 9. I think Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed with this livery that they went away from making one part of the car one color and one part of the car the other color, which I like that because I know why they did it last year. Because it was Lewis's last year at the team. They wanted to get part of the gray in from his prime years and then the black from the recent years. They wanted to make that obvious of like this is two different eras from the past 10 years or whatever. But this seems like a refresh into the new era of Mercedes while keeping their traditional colors. And I noticed that there's a lot more black on the car compared to last year or the year before in 2022 when they were just straight up gray. So, yeah, I like it. I would say I would give this a 9. And this is just more of a personal preference. I like colors that are happier and it's just a little
Did you like
too
when the
dark
red
for
was
me.
on there? Did it pop for you, or was it like in a negative way?
I feel like with the darker Mercedes liveries, yes, I liked it. But when it was the lighter Mercedes liveries, no, it didn't work as well.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, it's a good livery, and Mercedes has always had good liveries, I think, and that says a lot considering how much they've changed it in just the last 5 years.
Yeah. All right, next up is Red Bull, and I don't
Do
think
we even need to review this?
there's not much change, if at all. I feel like every year I have to go back and look at the sponsor placement, because I think that does sometimes change from year to year. Although generally this is the same livery, I'm not sure if any sponsors truly changed. I'm gonna give it an 8. I would give it higher, and I'm not giving it an 8 because they didn't change their livery and it's a great livery. I don't like on the rear wing that there's a sponsor there. I like when it says Red Bull on the rear wing, kind of like the Racing Bulls. And I know they have it on the front wing, but the rear wing should also be it. But they have it a sponsor instead. I think if they had the Red Bull logo there with either red, it'll pop a little bit better. To me, it's just a little dull on the rear end, the rear wing. And for me, that's why I would give it an 8. But if they did do that change, I would probably give it a perfect score as well. It's an iconic livery, but again, that is probably my only complaint in recent years, because there was one year where they did have the Red Bull logo on their rear wing, and then they changed it, for a sponsor placement instead, which makes sense. But I don't know. I think it pops a little bit better with the red from the Red Bull rather than just a white sponsor placement. But nonetheless, it's a classic Red Bull.
Yeah, classic Red Bull. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The only thing and this isn't really even critiquing the livery, it's just really weird to see a 30 on that car. Maybe because we've had the same two drivers there for a while, and you have Max Verstappen with the big 1 on his car, and now you have Liam Lawson coming in with the 30. But really, that shouldn't look weird because I think Verstappen's going to have the 33 back in 2026. But I would say, yeah, I would give this an 8 out of 10, just because I've always loved Red Bull's liveries, but we are judging this based off of if they changed anything. And to your point, if the one change they made, even if it was a sponsor change, if the one change they made was a downgrade, then you can't give it a 10 out of 10, right?
Right.
So I'll give it an 8 as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next up is Ferrari. And this is the year Lewis Hamilton gets to drive it. Still very surreal as I was watching it. And I thought they didn't even talk to Max Verstappen and Red Bull. They talked to every other team besides them, I think, because he started to get booed, and then he didn't really want to talk, but he was kind of forced to be there, and that's why they cut straight to Ferrari. And I thought that was a little bit odd. I mean, I don't know. Ferrari has had some interesting liveries in the last few years, with some weird sponsor placements and different colors on the car. I remember one year they had the green on the rear of the car for I think it's the Mission Winnow sponsorship. They had white. They had black arrows in the back. They've had yellow as a one-off livery, which actually was kind of cool. The only complaint is going to be with that white HP on the side of the car. I don't hate it, and I think it works actually quite well because on both the rear and the front wing you have white with the HP. So it's a theme throughout the car. If it was just on the side pod, I would say it's kind of an eyesore. But the white is pretty much throughout the car, the rear, the middle, and the front. The angle of the white is just a little awkward, which I don't think really works. The angle of which they cut the white and painted the white is just awkward. And then they have a little carbon fiber bit below that as well, which they should have filled out more with red. Yeah, I mean, it's still a nice livery. It's always going to be a nice looking livery because, you know, the red just carries it most of the time. But it's not a perfect livery. So I'm going to probably give it I'm still giving it probably an 8.
I thought from
But
how you led that up, I thought you were going to give it like a 4.
no, because
or
you
a
know,
3.
I don't really dislike any of the liveries this year, to be honest. I kind of like them all because they all signify the team quite well. And you know, I think last year I was quite upset with a lot of the cars going to just the carbon bits and getting rid of paint. And this year we've seen more paint get back onto the car, and I think that's a good direction. You know, but not big major changes from a lot of teams, and even them, it's a big change, but it works. But it's not perfect, but it's not bad, and I actually quite like it. And I think on track and throughout the season, I think we'll be fine. And it'll look good, you know, when they're on track. So, all in all, yeah, not too bad.
I love this livery. I really do. I love the white. I think it complements the number of the car, which is good because my thing with last year's Ferrari livery is that it was just too much red. There wasn't enough yellow on the car. It was just one big red livery with a little bit of yellow to support the Shell logo. But this year, you got the white, which supports the number on the car, but it also supports the sponsor.
Right.
And I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10 just because I do agree with you that there is a little too much white on the, what do you call it? Not the roof of the car, but you know where I'm talking about. If they had a little bit less white in that area, it would be an easy 10. I absolutely love these colors, and I think it's going to look great on track. I think, and this could be on a driver basis, because I think Lewis's yellow helmet is going to look really good.
I agree.
In that paint scheme. And I think if we're just talking about Lewis's livery, that could be a 10 because of his helmet. But yeah, no, this is a very, very solid livery with maybe a little bit of a touch-up that is keeping it away from a 10.
Next team, and the final team, which had a lot of the championship cars on the grid. And they had their Constructor Championship on stage as well, which I thought was cool. I think they should do that every year as well. Whoever the champion is, have the trophy, present it. Like, that was cool to start the season with McLaren, and everyone knows going to the season they're the Constructor Champions from last year. They get to do their reveal last. They showed all their championship winning cars on stage. They had the trophy on stage, the drivers, and they look ready. They look hungry to win it again and to get a driver's champion out of it. The livery did not change, and for good reason. This is kind of their livery for McLaren, not only in F1 but some other racing categories as well. It works. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I feel like in the past, more orange on the car looked better. I think back in like the 2018 kind of year, I liked that with the orange and the blue as opposed to the orange and the black. But nonetheless, it does work. I like the MasterCard sponsorship on the front wing with the orange. Just the colors of the MasterCard on the front wing. The Google Chrome wheels are interesting and fun. The bits and pieces of orange and black, I think, complement each other quite nicely. The sponsors are nice as well. When it's on orange, you have black lettering, and then on the black or carbon bits, you have the white sponsor lettering. And they didn't change it because they won the championship last year. So, why change, like you said, if it's not broken? So, even though I'm not in love with it, I'd probably have to give it a 10 because it's kind of an iconic livery now. And just on that basis alone, I think it's a perfect livery.
Yeah, I agree. I will also give this a 10 out of 10 because, yeah, they didn't change anything because they didn't need to. The livery is becoming iconic, but we got to talk about the colors because these colors are very obviously McLaren, which you can't say about some of the other teams on this list this year.
Yeah.
There's some teams to where it's like, okay, yeah, those are their colors, but how does it represent them? And the orange and the black, this is easily McLaren. You can point this paint scheme out to anybody, and yeah, this is McLaren. By the way, I've said paint scheme instead of livery like 10 times so far in this episode, so do not call me out in the comments. I know.
He's a NASCAR guy. Get him out of here.
I am a NASCAR guy. That will never change. But yeah, this is it's a good livery, and it's gonna win races this year.
Yeah.
It'll compete for a championship.
Oh, yeah.
So 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about McLaren this year, they're the only team without a sponsorship in their team name. It's just McLaren. And
Interesting.
I think that shows, hey, they won last year and it was just McLaren in their name. They have sponsorships on the car, but they're not willing to give up the name. Now, does that change? Probably. I think a price tag in this business, I think you have to follow the crowd. But they, I guess, didn't find anything that they wanted to switch the name to you. So, in that case, they're just McLaren. And for that, I think they're going to have a great season. So, that is all of the liveries. Tomorrow is, or if this is out, it'll be later today, the Belgium Grand Prix, February 25th, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. That's for TCR's F1 Series. This is our podcast, The Racing and Debrief. Follow us on all socials and join the TCR Discord server, where we are the most active. This episode should be on Spotify, as well as Apple Music, and on our YouTube channel. Any other final thoughts, Camden?
No, I think that this reveal this year was great. And this isn't the last that you'll see of reveals for 2025 on this channel. We're going to get into helmets at a later date, so stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you all for tuning in and listening. Follow us on all social media, and until next time, thank you for listening.